I am super excited for you guys to join me today. This has been on the cards for a while. And one of those things right now, if you are struggling with staff recruitment, staff onboarding, or staff retention, this is the number one session, the number one thing you should be listening to right now. So I am super excited to have the amazing Joey Coleman with me. Now, for those of you that are familiar with our world and you're familiar with the content we've shared before, we have gone deep around two amazing books. One of them is How to Never Lose a Customer Again. And more recently, we've gone deeper on How to Never Lose an Employee Again. Joey, I am super grateful for you joining us today because you're honestly, normally when I read a book, I will go quite deep on it and then I'll take as much as I can. I'll keep going back over it. But I am forever absorbed in your book right now. And I generally mean this because there is so much to every single chapter or phase that you go through that I am constantly pulling new content out all the time. And there's just an unbelievable amount of value in there. So huge respect to you. I'm going to pass over to you, if you don't mind first, just to give us a bit of a background to you. For those of the people that don't know you yet, give them a bit of a history, tell us about your books, and then we'll dive into some questions.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, Nick, thank you so much for the kind introduction, for inviting me on the show, for introducing me to your audience, and for the kind words about the book. It is music to my ears because when I was writing the book, my hope was that my book wouldn't be a once and done. My hope was
Okay.
to write a book that people would actually continue to come back to. Because as your business grows, as your enterprise evolves, you have different challenges as it
Absolutely.
relates to both your customers and your employees. And so, what I wanted to try to do was write books that were evergreen, that people could dive deeper and deeper into the books with each passing year or each passing growth cycle of their
I love
business. So,
that.
the fact that that's been your experience, you've made my dream come true when I was writing the book. So, thanks for sharing that. For the last 20 years, I've taught companies around the world how to keep their customers and how to keep their employees. I'm a full-time speaker. I do workshops. I'm probably on the road about 2.5 weeks out of every month. I do
Oh, wow.
consulting engagements. As you mentioned, I write books. And all of the umbrella under which all of this falls is, what are the kind of experiences that we are creating? And are we creating those experiences with the intentionality of being so remarkable, so unique, so special, so unexpected that they keep people coming back for more, whether those are your customers or your employees? My background is incredibly eclectic and crazy. I was a criminal defense lawyer. I worked for the United States Secret Service. I worked in the White House Office of Counsel to the President. I worked for the Central Intelligence Agency. I was a business consultant. I taught at the postgraduate level. I ran an ad agency for 15 years.
Oh, wow.
But what's interesting about all these jobs, when people hear my background, they're like, oh my gosh, he couldn't hold down a job. Well, maybe. But more importantly, in each of these jobs, the way you succeeded was by having a keen understanding of the human condition. Why do humans do the things they do? And what can we do to convince, persuade, encourage them to do the things that we would like them to do?
Mm.
And so that is kind of the educational background and the experiential background that has led us to where we are today.
I love that. There's so many kind of epiphanies, I think, that I look at through these books that you talk about. And some of them you think, there's one I'm going to refer to right at the start. You touch on most companies say, I wish my employees cared about the business as much as I do. And then you talk about the very next page around most employees wish the owners cared about them as much as they care about their business. And it's just, there's so many things in there that you touch on that, as you say, relate not only to one industry, but they relate across the whole board in terms of whether it's friendships, it's staff, it's colleagues, it's businesses you work with, customers. Everything is just so relevant. So I love that. One of the things I wanted to delve into, if we can, is around you touch around this the phases. Can we give everyone, if you don't mind, first of all, a quick overview as to how you came up with this structure around these phases? Because I think that's hugely important.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. So when I was looking at the customer experience, I started on the customer side and then segued into the employee side. But when I was looking at that experience, I was trying to figure out, well, what are all the steps of the customer journey? Now, when I started doing this 20-ish years ago, uh, the idea of a customer experience map or a customer journey map wasn't as common as it is today. And I'm
Okay.
glad that it's more common today, right? But,
Yeah.
it's maybe high level strategy meetings, people were talking about that, but most businesses were operating a little more transactionally. With the evolution of the internet, with the evolution of more sophisticated selling, with the evolution of global economies, both in terms of, being a small business that can serve any customer anywhere in the world, thanks to the internet and thanks to delivery mechanisms we have today, people started to think a little bit differently about who the competition was, what the products they were offering, what the services they were offering, and how all those things pieced together. And so what I realized is that many businesses were operating transactionally. Hey, we have this, you want this, we'll give you this.
Mm,
You give us some money. Whether that was in a customer context or an employee context. Hey, you need money, you need a job, we
yeah.
have work, we'll give it to you. That was a flawed fundamental principle from the beginning, but it's how most businesses were operating. And the reason it was a flawed fundamental practice from the beginning is because it was purely transactional and didn't take into account the humans that were actually involved in the interaction, their feelings, their dreams, their hopes, their fears, their concerns, their personal psychology, the group psychology, all these things that were tied into it. And when we started to dissect and look at the full life cycle, for example, of an employee experience, we realized that there are 8 distinct phases that every employee has the potential to go through. Now, I say the potential, Nick, because not every employee is going to make it through all 8 phases while working for you. And that's okay. They don't have to make it through all 8, but we got to strive to get them through at least 6. And if we don't get them through those first 6, we have no hope of getting them to 7 and 8. And when you ask most employers, what are they looking for in employees? They want loyalty. They want commitment. They want people thinking outside of the box. They want people going the extra mile. Those are all the things that happen in the last 2 phases. So we can't even get to that thing
Ooh,
you
that's
want
interesting.
as a business owner if we don't lay the foundation of all the preceding phases that happen in the same order in every job, in every industry on the planet. And why is that the case? Because we're talking about humans. Human psychology operates in a very similar way across all cultures, across all socioeconomic standings, across all educational levels. If we meet people where they're at as humans, it's a lot easier to navigate them through the journey we want them to have as our team members or as our employees.
I love that. I remember I remember you talking about this, that first 6 phases, and how you were saying, because it's relatable. It's so relatable that you look at it and you think, yeah, that person got to that point, but they really didn't get to those last 2. And when you talk about this now, and the connection I hadn't made was that very last piece where you said around, if they don't get to those last 2 phases, that's where the magic happens of when they do become that Raven fan, when they do talk about you, they do praise you. So it makes total sense when you think about it from that logical order. So I love that. So let's just give it, if you don't mind, can we just
Yeah.
give everyone a quick overview to what those phases are? Just a very quick overview. And for those of you that haven't got the book, you need to go and get a copy of this book. It is unbelievable. It's by far one of the best books I've ever read. And for the industry as a whole right now, team, like it will solve so many of your challenges that are going on right now. So what are those titles, Joe, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I so appreciate that, Nick. And I so empathize with what's going on in the industry right now. I mean, you all are operating in one of the most challenging industries on the planet, in one of the most challenging times in the history of childcare as a business and as an industry. So you're in the thick of it. I empathize with where you're at. And hopefully, this framework will give you a different way of thinking about your team members and about your employees that will maybe make it a little easier to navigate. So, as I shared earlier, there are 8 phases to the employee journey. And each of these phases starts with the letter A. That's not to confuse you, but that's to think about it almost as a report card from your employees. That if you get each phase right, it's like getting straight A's from your team. They're like, we love working here. We love what's
Good
going
job.
on. We're feeling good about it. So the first phase is the assess phase. In the assess phase, a prospective employee, a candidate, is trying to decide whether or not they want to come work for you. They're checking out your job listing or your posting. They're going to the About Us page or the careers page on your website. They're getting a feel for who you are. They might be going on LinkedIn or some other social network to kind of figure out who they know that also works with you or used to work with you so they can get the real scoop on what it's like to be a member of your team. They're submitting their application or their resume. They're going through the interview process. In common parlance, we think of this as recruiting.
Yeah.
But it's more than just recruiting. It's all the steps of the feeling. It's all the steps of the education. This is what the expectations are going to be. This is what the job's going to be like. Here's what you can count on from us. Here's what we're going to be expecting from you. All those things are tied into this first phase, the assess phase. We then come to phase 2, the accept phase. The accept phase has 2 component pieces. We look at the candidates and we accept that this is the one we want. So we extend them a job offer. And if we're lucky, they accept our job offer. Now, in most businesses, this is a very transactional interaction. It's an offer letter that feels like it was written by an attorney. It's not particularly emotional. It's not particularly celebratory. But this is when we transition from being a prospective employee or a candidate to being an actual employee. Almost immediately after that happens, literally as they accept, we move into phase 3, the affirm phase. Now, I'd be willing to bet almost everybody listening in, everybody watching is familiar with the phrase buyer's remorse. When a buyer begins to doubt the decision they just made to purchase your product or service. What you may not be as familiar with is new hires remorse. It is the exact same thing as buyer's remorse, scientifically proven that every new employee is going to feel. Right after they accept your offer, they're going to doubt the decision they just made. There are biochemical reasons in the brain for this. There are sociological and psychological reasons why this. But the practical reality is they begin to doubt their decision. And in this phase, you need to affirm their choice. You need to remind them that they made a thoughtful choice, they made a good choice, and that the choice is going to pay good dividends for them in the future. We then come to phase 4, the activate phase. Now, the activate phase is the only phase in the 8 phases that is but 1 day long. It is the first official day on the job. Now, some of you are like, Joey, okay, so that's day 1 of the first 100 days of the employee experience. No, friends, day 1 is when they accept the job offer.
Yeah, totally.
So this might be day 15 if they've given 2 weeks notice at their current employer, or maybe they don't come to work for you for a month. This could be day 30 of their employee journey. You're thinking it's day 1. Meanwhile, they're like, I've been at this a month. I've been a member of the team, and yet there's very little communication. So in the activate phase, we want to energize the relationship. We want to let them know that working here is going to be unlike any place they've ever worked before. We want that day to be truly remarkable, because here's what we know will happen, Nick. When they go home that night after their first day on the job, to their spouse, their significant other, their children, their parents, their roommate, whoever they live with, or if they live alone, they're going to call a loved one. And the first question that loved one is going to ask is, how was your day?
Yeah, totally.
We know that's going to happen. We've been that new hire. We've had that life experience ourselves. And yet so few businesses think intentionally about how do we want the new hired employee to answer that question. Do we want them to say, oh, the day was spent reviewing paperwork? The day was spent, watching sexual harassment videos that were filmed in the 70s. And it leaves me wondering, is there a lot of that kind of harassment going on here? Why is that the first thing they're trying to teach me? Or, hey, they threw me into the deep end with the kids, and I started changing diapers and watching kids right away. And I was like, wait, I'm not even sure what your policies and procedures are. How they answer that question is going to dramatically impact whether they stay for the long term or not. That first day is crucial. We then come to phase 5, the acclimate phase. In the acclimate phase, the new hire gets used to your way of doing business. Now, this begins with their second day on the job and lasts for weeks or even months while they get used to their role, the responsibilities, the requirements of the job, and most importantly, the other relationships within the team that they need to maintain. The 4 R's, right? Roles, requirements, responsibilities, and relationships. Your onboarding process as an employer needs to address all 4 of those things. needs to help them by holding their hand as they navigate this new way of doing business. We then come to phase 6, the accomplish phase. Now, the accomplish phase in some ways is different for every employee. It's not as set on a schedule as the previous phases. And the reason why is in the accomplish phase, the employee achieves the goal they had when they originally accepted your job offer. See, every employee has a vision of what working for you is going to look and feel like. And until they achieve that vision, they haven't accomplished. Our job as employers is to figure out, well, what is their vision? What are they hoping to accomplish? And how can we track their progress towards that accomplishment so that when they do accomplish it, we can celebrate with them, as well as celebrating the many milestones along the way as they work their way. So those are the first 6. Remember, I said we got to get through the first 6. We got to lay the foundation in those first 6 phases. Now, some people listening are going, geez, Joey, I didn't know there were any phases, let alone 6 that I had to pay attention. Okay, so let's say you've got the first 6 and you're doing well and they accomplish. Now we have the potential to move into phase 7, the adopt phase. In the adopt phase, the employee becomes loyal to you and only you. There's another daycare facility open up in town. Doesn't matter. They're not going to go interview over there. They're committed to you. Somebody says to them, oh, hey, there's this new company that is hiring and it's completely in a different industry, but they pay more. Doesn't matter. They're not going to go over there. They have adopted your approach. They are committed. They are bought in. And if, and only if, Nick, we've gotten them through each of these 7 phases, do we have the right, the privilege, the opportunity to invite them into the 8th and final phase, the advocate phase, where they become a raving fan singing our praises far and wide. We've got a new position open for a caregiver. They are recruiting all of their best friends who they know are amazing workers to apply for the position. They're going on Glassdoor and writing reviews, unsolicited, of how awesome it is to work for you. These are the employees we're all striving to have. The problem is most employers want to jump from the first day on the job to the advocate phase without spending time in the phases that necessarily have to come in between.
Honestly, there's so much gold in that, Joey. And I was writing questions down and having even more kind of epiphanies as I go through this with you. There's a couple of things here that I wanted to ask you. The one that I think a lot of business, we were talking about this yesterday. We were talking about day one. And we had a couple of our clients on yesterday, and I said, tell me about your typical day one when someone comes to work for you. And they all started to smile. Because with the greatest respect in this industry, having been in this industry for 17 years now, it typically consists of a minimum of 5 to 6 hours sitting down and reading policies, procedures, and just, maybe getting a taste of what it looks like in the room. But the majority of time is literally, hey, there you go, sit there for 8-9 hours and just read through policies, procedures, and then tell me at the end that you've actually read them and you signed them off. And that's the typical. And we talked about this yesterday, and people were smiling because they knew it was exactly what they do right now. It's the typical day today. So there's that one I want you guys to take away from this, that really start to think about day one. But what I'm curious to hear, this one we touched on, which was the accomplished phase. The one that I think most business owners struggle with in this space is, what does that accomplished phase look like? And do you find that's one of the common questions you get during this phase that's hard to answer?
During this phase, yes, Nick. The challenge is most folks aren't even close to this phase yet, right? They're going, oh my gosh, our assess phase is a mess. That's the first one. We've got to start there. But if you get the other phases set up, if you get your way to the accomplished phase, and also for all of you that are operating businesses where you currently have employees, they are in some state of the accomplished phase right now.
Yeah.
Because here's the tricky nuance. This, we have kind of like the 101 version and the 201 and the 301 and the 401 graduate school level version of the work. Knowing that you're a big fan of the work and you've dived deep into the book, let's go to kind of the graduate level version of this. The graduate level version of this is once they accomplish the first goal they had, they create a new goal that they're trying to accomplish. So let's say somebody just let's give a practical example. All right, let's say you're running a daycare or childcare facility, and you've got somebody who it's their first time entering the industry. Okay. But you interviewed them, they're committed, they love kids. You're like, oh, they're going to be great, and they're going to be a good fit, and everything going on. And you hire them, and they work with you for about 6 months, and they're doing an amazing job. They're feeling fulfillment at work. They're connecting with the kids. They're doing everything they're supposed to do and more. You're getting positive feedback from the parents or the guardians or the family members who are saying, oh my gosh, my kid loves working with Sally, or, whoever it is. They're like, oh, she's amazing, do, whatever it may be. Well, now what? What's next? Oh, I know. We'll do a pay raise at your annual review. Well, okay. Yes, we need to pay livable wages. We need to be thinking about the economics of our business. But just getting more money next year probably isn't going to light Sally up. Why? Because Sally's already seems to be the kind of person that's really taking off and is really excelling and is going above and beyond and is doing everything we're asking plus more. Sally has bigger dreams. What are those? Have you had that conversation? Some owners are afraid to have that conversation because they're afraid that Sally's going to say, I want to open my own center.
Yeah.
Okay. And so they pretend that this isn't on Sally's mind, and they pretend that it isn't on their mind. And instead they're like, well, I don't want to tell her too much because she might be planning to leave and open a competitor.
Okay.
And the reality is, if she is, you should support that. Now, some people are just like, Joey, you're crazy. Why would I want to build my competitors? Well, you only build your competitors if you think of them as competitors, not allies. So maybe you've been thinking about expanding to a different town or a different location or building a second facility, but you're trying to figure out who would run that. Well, now maybe Sally could run that. But until you lead into that conversation, Sally might not even be thinking about that. Sally may also be thinking, I started dating somebody that lives 3 towns over.
Yeah, totally.
And I've been going over there a lot. And this commute is kind of not as fun anymore, coming back from dates. And, I'd love to live over there, but I really love my job. Meanwhile, you're thinking, I'd love to open a center or facility in that town 3 towns over. But if you're not having that conversation, they're going to quit. And you're never going to know that there would have been an opportunity to grow your business and deepen the relationship and take it to an even higher level of accomplishment. The thing that most employees, you ask me, what are they missing in the accomplished phase? The thing that they are missing is regularly. And by regularly, I don't mean once a year. I mean about once every 6 months. With some employees, it might even be once every 3 months. But let's say once every 6 months is a good standard. Checking in with that employee. What are your personal goals? What are your professional goals? How can I be helping you with those? If the employee says, well, I really wish I was making some more money. Okay, great. Can you give me an idea of what you mean by more? Well, I was really hoping that I could make, 10% more than I'm making right now. And you're thinking in the back of your head as the owner, well, I was planning a 3% pay raise, but now I've got a 7% gap. What in my business could I have this person do that would be worth a 7% bump, and I increase their responsibilities?
Totally.
Now you're having a completely different conversation. Most owners, they get in that state and they're like, well, they just want more money.
Yes.
No, it's not. They may want more money, but what they actually want is more responsibility, more freedom, more possibility. Money is the vehicle that everybody gets to point to that is easier sometimes to have a conversation about than, I just want you to trust me more.
Yeah.
I want to have more responsibility here. I want to have more say here. There's a lot of things we do here that just don't make sense to me. And I feel like I kind of bring those to you from time to time. And sometimes you act on them and sometimes you don't. I'd really like to take our services to the next level. Are you interested in doing that? Because that's what excites me as an employee. As an employer, I will tell you, when members of my team say, Joey, we'd like to take it to the next level, I'm like, let's hear it. What's your plan? What's your strategy? How have we thought through it? Because those are the kind of people I want on my team. I don't want drones. I don't want worker bees that just do what they're told. I want people that not only complete the task, but are constantly coming to me with, you have us taking 5 steps over here. I think we could do it in 3 and be even more effective than we are in 5.
Totally.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. What are those ideas? How are you fostering those conversations?
I couldn't agree more with you. Do you know there's an example there actually. We've got a team member right now that unfortunately is moving. She's been with us a very, very long time. Do you ever find that people, for example, that may have been with you a very, very long time have gone all the way up to, phase 8, they're right at the top there, but eventually that something happens that they just move on? How do you deal with that? Or how do you I'll give you the scenario that's happened with us. This particular team member, love this person's bits, been with us a very, very long time, many, many years. But it's got to the point where they want less responsibility.
Mhm.
And where I let them down for me is that I didn't have that conversation early enough. And too much was probably given to that person, but they want to step that back slightly. So could you, any advice or anything you could give around that, Joey? Because I'm really interested to hear.
Yeah. So a couple of thoughts on that, Nick. Number one, I want to acknowledge your self-awareness to say, I probably could have had a conversation
Mm,
earlier, right? This is why I'm encouraging that every 6 months. And with employees that are at a higher level, it might even be every 3 or 4 months, right?
yeah, for
Because
sure.
it's a fast evolving world. There's a lot going on. I think the I think the secret here is when we start a business, so many business owners, when they start a business, they refer to their business as their baby. Okay. And they think about growing their business and raising their business. I used to be guilty of this as well until I actually had children. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, a business isn't a baby at all. A baby is much more difficult than a business. Like a business is hard, don't get me wrong, but it is exponentially easier than raising children. But what I think often happens is when we have a long-term trusted, valued employee, or even somebody that we just see a lot of promise in, say that they're going to quit or that they want to leave or that we dial back. Our first, and this is okay because we're human, our first thought is to feel hurt. Our
Mm,
first thought is to feel betrayed and abandoned. Like, oh, of course, after all the time and effort I put into them, why are they leaving? Oh, all the sacrifice I made, all the times I made sure their payroll was paid, even though mine wasn't, all the promise, all the opportunity. And now, just when I finally got them to the point where I feel like they're actually performing and producing and we're running, now they want to quit and move somewhere else, or now they want to dial back and they, yeah, they're human. And that's okay. And I think the sooner we realize that a human's choice to not continue the employment with relationship with us in the way we currently have it conceived is not a betrayal, but rather a change in circumstance, the
mm,
easier it is. If you, as a business owner, were thinking, okay, we used to have 3 toddler rooms, and now we're going to add a 4th toddler room. Is that a betrayal to the 3?
mm.
Is that an abandonment of your care for the 3 to now focus on this other room? No, it's an evolution. It's an evolution of your business. It's a change in circumstances. No one should be feeling it as a personal affront or a personal betrayal. It's just a shift.
Yeah.
We want the world to deal with our shifts as business owners, our changes in pricing, our changes in services, our new rollouts, our new locations, all these. We want everyone to accept these with open arms and be excited about it and come participate. Yet when we have an employee that says, I fell in love and I need to move to another state to be closer to the person I want to be married to, or my spouse got an amazing job, the job of their dreams in another country, and so I'm going to need to quit so that I can go be part of their dream. We take that as, oh, how could you be so rude? How could you abandon me? And it's like, no, they're evolving. So here's the analogy. I'm not a big fan of sports analogies, Nick, but here's one where I think a sports analogy can maybe help a business owner. If you look at a collegiate level coach, they are recruiting players from the high school talent pool to
Yeah.
come be on their team. Now, there are only so many players globally at that age bracket with that level of collegiate eligibility that are good enough to play on the team. So we
Sure.
immediately narrow the field. It's not that anybody could have this job, it's a much narrower field. And we're also competing against other schools that want them to come be on their team. So it's highly competitive. Stop me if any of these analogies don't fit childcare,
No,
right? I
totally.
mean, to me,
Totally.
these are just exactly what
That,
childcare is
that,
dealing with right now, right?
totally.
So then you get someone to join your team. Here's what college coaches know that business owners don't know. At best, because of eligibility rules and injuries, that player is going to be on your team for 6 years. At best. More likely, if they're really good, if they're a star performer, if they're really, the diamond in the rough that you spotted early, they're going to be with you for 2 or 3 years before they leave and go pro to the next level. Are we offended that they leave? Are we irritated? Well, the fans sometimes are. Oh, I can't believe they declared early and they left and they're going pro and But it also creates an alumni network and the ability to go to other recruits and say, hey, by the way, you have this dream of eventually making it to the pros. Look how many of our players make it to the pros. A
Yeah.
lot. So what is the equivalent in the childcare industry? Well, the equivalent is recognizing that none of your employees are going to be with you forever. Just accept that. You're not even going to be with you forever. At some point, you're going to decide, I don't want to do this business anymore. Many of you already decided, I don't want to do the diapers anymore. I don't want to, fill the sippy cups. I don't want to do this. You already decided that. You didn't see that as abandoning that role when you removed yourself from the day-to-day and started hiring people to do that. So why are you seeing it as abandonment when one of your employees says, I want to do something more? Instead, if we're having the conversations with them, there's the opportunity to elevate it. Well, what does more mean to you? Do you want to be in a more administrative role? Do you want to be in a more growth role? Do you want to run your own location and we spin up a second location? Do we want to expand to doing after school care? So we go from childcare to just after school care. And do you want to start that whole new program? Oh, working with older kids, that'd be real. I never even thought of that. Yeah. And we can get a van that you can drive around and pick kids up and bring them back to our facility. But instead of doing like, hey, nap time with the kids, you can be helping with homework or doing art projects or taking them on field trips and blah, blah, blah. Well, now that employee is going, oh, there's possibility here beyond the job I already have. Most employees don't know that. I'll close with this because I realize this is a long answer to a simple question.
Oh, I love this.
One of the case studies in the book that is my favorite, it's tough to say you have a favorite, but this one is so applicable, especially in the childcare industry, comes from a company called Well-Oiled Operations. Well-Oiled Operations is a fairly small team, about 15, 17 employees, okay? And they do something every year. They have an annual meeting of their whole team. Now, many of the people listening, you have an annual meeting with all your team members and you kind of present a vision of the future. Well, Well-Oiled Operations presents a 3-year plan. Like, here's where we want to be 3 years from now. And a lot of you have done vision mapping and vivid vision, and you're familiar with these things. And you're like, yeah, I have a plan for 3 years from now. And you share that with your teams. And that's glorious. But here's what Well-Oiled Operations does that is very unique and yet very valuable. They also present the org chart for 3 years from now.
No.
These are the positions that we're going to need to hire for 3 years from now. And where it gets really, so first of all, Nick, that's brilliant because most employees can't see their next job.
Yeah, totally.
Most employees can't figure out, well, what's the next job I have, other than looking directly in the chain of command and saying, well, I could become a supervisor. Yeah. But the person that's my supervisor just became a supervisor last year. And the person who was a supervisor before them was a supervisor for 10 years. So that means I have to wait 9 years until they're done being a supervisor before I can be a supervisor. What if I want to be a supervisor next year? I'm never going to be I should start looking for another job. And that's their thought process because they can't see other options. When you as the business owner say, here are the other options. Are any of these interesting to you? Come tell me, so that when we're ready to hire for this role in 3 years, you're our preferred candidate. You're our internal hire to promote to that role. They've done it where they've had people say, I really have an interest in photography, and there isn't a photography role. Well, there is a website product role, and that person's going to need to take photos of the products. So how about we start to pay for some photography classes for you now? By the way, watch the employee's face light up when you say that you'll pay for them to get more skills in their hobby. And as you become a better photographer, let's have you do some practice runs. Let's do a picture day with the kids where you take all the photos and then we give those to our clients as a gift. Well, now you're enhancing your client experience in the same way you're enhancing your employee experience. Yeah, totally. And by the way, once your skills are really up and running, we might be able to evolve to the point where we have a full-time photographer on staff. Now we're having an entirely different conversation.
Totally. Joey, you couldn't have nailed that anymore. Honestly, huge respect. That was unbelievable. There's an example. I'm going to go back a little bit if you don't mind. You touched on evolution, like the person stepping out the role, or the company, the owner stepping out. One thing I've seen a lot happen as well is, and I'd love to get your thoughts around this. When a center goes from having 1 to 2 locations, I've seen it happen where the team at the original location feel neglected. they feel lack of love. What's your thoughts, ideas, suggestions around that? It might sound obvious to some of us, but it's very common. I see this all the time, that you've got a great team at the first location, you're there every day, and now all of a sudden 95% of your time is spent over this brand new location. What's your thoughts around that, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, first of all, I have a lot of empathy for the challenge that the business owner has who's expanding to another location and can't spend as much time on the existing location
Mm,
because they're really focused on the new location. To draw an analogy, it's kind of like having a second child.
yeah,
You suddenly have to spend less time with the first child because the new child, the second child, needs more of your attention, needs more of your focus. It's a baby, it's a different growth stage.
totally.
The opportunity for the owner is to be conscious of that before it becomes a problem. So before the team is melting down at the first location that you don't care about us anymore, what is your system and process to still be visible to them? Do you really have to be 5 days out of the week at the new location? Or can you commit to never doing more than 4 with a goal of getting it to 2 or 3 as quickly as possible?
Mm,
And then you say to your team, hey, for the first 2 months, I'm going to be there 4 days a week, but I'm still going to be here 1 day a week. And
yeah,
we're going to change which day out of the week I'm here to make sure that everybody who's here, regardless of their shift, gets FaceTime with me at
love that.
least once a month. And then I'm going to be more intentional on the day that I'm at the original location. I'm not sitting in my office at my computer. I'm out interacting with the team. Your
Yeah,
goal on that day is not anything but continuing to invest in the people at that location, not the process, not the systems. Do that on one of the other days. If you need to
yeah,
do emails, do that while you're sitting in the other place, just trying to make sure it doesn't catch on fire and burn down.
love-
Sit on your computer and do some emails there. When you were at the original location, which now is all about the people and less about the process, be investing in the people when you're there.
I I couldn't agree. I can literally see the owner that went through this right now, and if they'd had that approach, the difference it would have made to them in the first place would have been unbelievable. So I couldn't agree with you more on that, Joe. I could talk to you all day about this. But just we could go so deep, but we need to give the listeners some tips here, some guide points, etc. One of the things I've done, and I'd love to get your thoughts around this. What we did is we took all 8 phases that you've got and you've mapped out in your book. And if you haven't got it yet, everyone make sure you can get a copy of this. But that diagram you've created where you've got the different phases on the left-hand side, and then on the top, you've got the methods of communication. And one of the things we've highlighted there in that book is we've actually said to people, look, have a template, create this template and write down what you're currently doing for each of those phases, how you communicating in person, via phone, via post, etc. We get them to write those down first, and then look through those phases within the book, and then look at what you want to do in the future. So all we've done simply with a lot of our clients said to them, look, write down what you do now in black, and then put in red or another color the things you want to do in the future. Because for me, I think, as you said, there's a lot of people are probably wondering right now, where do I even begin with this?
Mm-hmm.
So what would your thoughts and suggestions, because you've worked with thousands of companies around this, what would you suggest in this scenario?
So I love the idea of the template. And in fact, if anybody wants to send me an email, my email is Joey, Joeyc, as in Joey Coleman, joeyc at joeycoleman.com. Joey like a baby kangaroo or a 5-year-old in your center. Coleman, Coleman.com, joeycoleman.com. If you send me an email, I will send you that template that you just suggested people make, right? Where it breaks down the 8 phases, it gives you an idea of what to do, and it has the suggestions and recommendations as well as things you can be happy to provide that free to anybody that's
Awesome.
listening or
Thank
wants to do it. Here's the one thing, and we can close on this. The one suggestion that I would have that everyone can do in the next 3 minutes that will do more to move the dial on your employee experience than any other recommendation I would have. So everybody who's listening or watching along, when you're done listening, when you shut this down, I want you to take 3 minutes. I want you to pull out your phone. I know your phone is probably within arm's reach. I want you to open the camera app. I want you to flip it to selfie mode, and I want you to toggle over to video. I then want you to shoot a 30-second video. Now, here's what you're going to do. I want you to think about the member of your team that you couldn't live without. That if they came to you today and said, I'm giving my notice, I can't do this anymore, it would be crushing. You would think like, oh my gosh, how are we going to survive, right? Your best employee, your favorite employee, your most valuable employee, however you might choose to name them. You're all thinking of someone right now, right? You're going to shoot a video for that person. And here's what you're going to do. You're going to tell them the 3 things you value the most about them. That's it. The 3 things that you love about them. You love about how they show up at work. You love about their attitude. You love about their skill. You love about who they are as a human outside of work, whatever it may be. The 3 things that are most valuable. And if you're struggling to come up with 3 things that are really valuable about them, I'd like to know how much time you're investing in your team, right? You should be able to come up with these 3 things fairly quickly. And you're going to shoot a little selfie video. So let's pretend I'll role model what it would be. Let's pretend Nick's on my team. Hey, Nick, I was listening to this podcast with this crazy speaker the other day, and he asked us to think of our favorite team member. And I immediately thought of you. I love your energy. You always come to every meeting, every interaction we have as if you've just woken up ready to conquer the day. It's absolutely fantastic. But you know what I also love? I love your attention to detail. You're a lifelong learner. You're the kind of person that takes the initial thing and dives deeper to make sure we fully comprehend and understand it. And what I love the most is you've got a gigantic heart. You not only care about the process, but you care about the people. The way you show up at work, not only with our peers, but with our customers, looking out for them, making sure everyone is feeling the love and taken care of. I don't say it enough, but it lights me up. It makes me excited to come to work, knowing that you're going to be there. Thanks for everything you do. Thanks for being an amazing team member. Thanks for being you. Stop. And then here's the trick, friends. That's the easy part. The trick is immediately text it to the person. Do not watch the video. You're going to want to watch the video. You're going to want to be like, oh, let's see. How did it come out? You're going to play the video and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, my hair looks ridiculous. Or, oh, the angle of the camera was wrong. Or, oh, the lighting was off. And you're going to say, oh, I'm going to reshoot it again. Okay. Hey, Nelson. Oh God, no, it's not for Nelson. It's for Nick. Hang on a second. Okay. Hey, Nick. I like you. And you're going to get tongue tied and you're not going to send the video. If you send this video, the research shows that that video will be watched in full within 90 seconds of receipt. That employee, that team member now has digital proof that they matter. They have an artifact that they are seen, that they are heard, and they are valued. And in this day and age, Nick, I'm telling you, human beings are dying for proof that they matter. Yeah. They are dying for proof that someone sees them, that someone hears them, that someone values them, that someone cares for them. And as employers, I know this to be true about all employers. You actually do really care about your people. And not just because of what they provide to your business. You care about them. The problem is you are so caught up in the running of your business. You are so caught up in the day-to-day machinations of your operations that you forget to tell them in a meaningful way. It's a flyby. It's an attaboy, attagirl. It's a, hey, thanks so much. Or, oh, you're great. Do. Give them proof. Give them a video. I promise you they will save that video and they will watch it more than once. And on days when they're thinking about quitting, or on days when they're thinking that the boss doesn't really care about me as much as I thought they did, they will be able to go to that video as additional proof. It'll take you less than 3 minutes to shoot. And the impact and the ripple effect of that will be huge. Oh, and by the way, pro tip, since I know we've got the advanced audience listening in and paying attention today, you don't have to do it for just one employee. You could actually do one every day for the next week or the next month or however many employees you have. Quick little video. That's it. 3 things that I love about you. Thanks for being you. Send. It'll change their experience.
Joey, that was honestly unbelievable. Make sure, guys, please give some love for Joey in this. You know, I know a lot of you right now are in the childcare space. You don't get to watch these live because you're in the childcare space. You're doing the day-to-day. It's later on when you're at home at night, you get back to listen to these. So when you do, please make sure you show some love for Joe, because I genuinely think this has probably been one of the best podcasts we've ever done in terms of value. I've been looking forward to this for a very long time. And so many, every single example you've given, I can think of clients, I can think of us, I can think of friends, I can think of all different scenarios where I've seen these things happen all the time. And Joey, I honestly cannot thank you enough. How, besides getting your two amazing books that you have, Never Lose an Employee Again and Never Lose a Customer Again, what is the best way for individuals to connect with you? Because right now, there are companies that maybe only have one or two employees, right the way up to companies that have thousands of locations that watch these. What's the best thing that they would do to take action regardless of where they are right now?
Yeah, so the best way to get in touch with me is through my website, joeycoleman.com, joeycoleman.com. There you'll find information about both of the books. You'll find information about my speaking and my workshops and my consulting, and there's more resources there that you can get. I'll also put in a plug. In each of the books, there's an opportunity to sign up to experience the book. So on the very first page of the book, it says, hey, would you like to have a unique experience while you're reading the book? You go to that website and you put in your name, your email, maybe your phone number if you want to, maybe your address if you want to. The more information you share, the more opportunities it gives for me to play and interact with you. You put in this information, and then you share about how long you think it's going to take you to consume the book. A week, 2 weeks, a month, whatever it may be. And then you'll get a series of messages, both automated and personalized from me, that come across while you're reading the book. It's a great way to start to see how some of these things can get put into practice.
I love that. And I saw that. I don't think I've seen anyone else do that. There might be, but I've never seen that before. And I love how you guys do that. It's awesome. Joey, I am so grateful. I think one of the things you and I are going to need to talk about, if possible, is, get you to one of our live events. Just your energy, your enthusiasm, your passion for what you do is just unbelievable. And I genuinely cannot thank you enough for your time and your commitment to give up to everyone today. And I really appreciate you doing this, Joey. So guys, make sure you give some love when you watch this back. Huge respect to every single one of you. You're going through a tough time right now, a lot of you. And hopefully, just one or two, even if one or two of you get a really big impact off this, we would have done our job today. So Joey, super, super grateful for you being here once again. Thank you for joining us on the CBG podcast.
Nick, my pleasure. And thanks to everybody for joining in and listening in. It was such a pleasure. And I wish you all the best as you go out and create those remarkable experiences for your employees as well as your clients.